Alrighty, here we go, folks. We're looking at number 11 here. It says, given that the height of a projectile in motion is given by this function here. So this is h of t is negative 16t squared plus v naught. This is called v naught t plus h naught, where v naught is the initial velocity in feet per second. H naught is the initial height of the object. It says find the maximum height the projectile reaches if it is launched from ground level. So ground level means that h naught is 0 because there is no initial height. And the initial velocity is 64 feet per second. So initial velocity, if you remember, was v naught. So this means v naught is 64. Okay. So then you have to basically plug it into the equation. So this equation will pop up time and time again. If you don't know this already, draw yourself a little model. Clearly this is a negative parabola. So if you throw something up in the air, it actually models a parabola. You can see it going up and down. And I want to find the max here. And this point up here, this is the max height. And in the parabola, this point is called the vertex. So basically, we just want to find the vertex of this parabola. So we're going to rewrite our equation here. So we're going to do h of t equals negative 16t squared plus v naught is 64, t plus h naught is 0, right? And so I'm going to rewrite this without the 0 to make it look clean. So h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 64t. Okay? Now, remember, I want to find the max height. Okay? So I'm either going to ask you two things. I'm either going to ask you for the max height, or I'm going to ask you where it hits the ground. And I'm going to draw two pictures, right? So if you notice, if you have a parabola going down, this is the max height, this is the vertex, okay? But if you also draw the same parabola, and this is the ground, right? If the rocket starts here and shoots up and it hits the ground, it's going to hit the ground here, right? Now it's also on the ground here. So these are the points where it hits the ground, which are called the blank of the parabola. These are the roots, okay? So you have to be prepared for either one. Max height is the vertex. Hits the ground is the roots. Okay? Alright. In this case, I want the max height. So I'm going to use the vertex equation. So it's Vx equals negative b over 2a. But in this case, x, if you notice, there is no x. It is, your independent variable is t. So we're actually going to change this to Vt equals negative b over 2a. You're going to see why in a second. Okay? Why? Because, well, let's plug it in. So we know that in our equation, this is ax squared plus bx, right? So a is clearly negative 16, and b is clearly 64. Okay? And then we just plug it in. So we say Vt equals negative b over 2 times a. Okay? And we solve this one. So Vt equals negative 64 over 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. And clearly this is going to be 2. Now this is where the t, you know, see how I put Vt here? Why did I put Vt? Because it tells me what the heck I found. If you look at your answer choice, you might be tempted to pick A, 2 feet, right? That makes sense. But that is wrong. Why? Because t in this case stands for time. Time, right? So you found here, because this is the h, this is the t-axis. So you found at 2 seconds. How do I know it's seconds? Because it was in feet per second. So those are my units. So you found at this time, at 2 what? At 2 seconds, it is at its maximum height here. I.e., it takes 2 seconds to get to the top. So what does this mean? This means that A is 2 feet. Well, that's clearly wrong because I want the feet, not seconds. So A is wrong. So how do I find this? Well, you would just need to plug it back in to the h equation, i.e. the height. And the height equation is right here. Right? We have it here. So we're going to plug t equals 2 into h of t. And h of t is just negative 16t squared plus 64t. and you plug in 2 seconds here, so we get negative 16 times 2 squared plus 64 times 2, and this gives me what? Negative 16 times 4 plus 2 times 64 is 128, and that's going to be, what is that, negative 64 plus 128, and then half of 128 is 64, therefore 64 minus 128 is going to be just 64. In this case it's feet. Why feet? Because it is h. H stands for height. And this is the final answer, which is going to be C here. And that's how you do it.